This is just the beginning, boo. This is just the beginning of the process lab. I warned you because like I've mentioned already in other videos and today, for the next few weeks, we're going to be focusing on knocking out your process documentation and creation in 2021 for your business.
You an entrepreneur, I got what you need.
Hey there, my loves. Welcome back to CPTV. I'm CP, and this is the place for aspiring and growing entrepreneurs who want to turn their passions into businesses and their businesses into freedom. Does that sound like you? Well, you are going to want to come on in, take a look around, check out all the content on this particular channel and subscribe, because every single Tuesday I am giving you the strategies and the step-by-step business processes to implement immediately in your business so that you can get to that level of entrepreneurial freedom that you so deserve and desire. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and click that bell so you don't miss any of it. And of course, if you like it, then show me, smash that like button and say, give me processes, CP, in the comments below. That's a good one for today, right? Okay, as entrepreneurs, we all have this dream of building a profitable business that works without us, but we still get trapped in our businesses. You get to a point where you can't step away from it for more than a day or two, or it will collapse, right? That means we have built a machine that depends on us and only us, and then we are stuck. But the worst part is that's the opposite of why we started our businesses in the first place. We wanted freedom, but now we are chained to our businesses. How did you end up here, my love? Why are you stuck? But more importantly, how do you get out of it? I mean, how do you change it? I totally get it. I have been there so many times. And each time I had to learn and work through the process of removing myself from the day-to-day tasks of my business. The answer was simple for me. It was easier said than done, however. So it's time that you evolve. Grow from being an employee of a business that you own to the business owner. And the solution to your problem lies in your business processes. Do you have them? Of course you do. We all do. You just may not realize it yet. Or maybe you do realize it. Regardless, you must have concrete, well-documented processes in order to step away from your business. Because when you step away, you still have to guide the ship. And your documented processes are the directions that you give your crew to get you to the destination. The fact is, once your business is working without you, your life will change. And today, I'm going to teach you how to create business processes and SOPs so you can create those maps. Give folks those directions that will lead you to being unstuck and on the path to that freedom that you deserve. So, let's get to work. Okay, first I want you to know that I'm going to go over a lot of information in today's episode. So I would definitely recommend that you pause and go grab a pen and a paper. I'll wait. And so that you can begin to jot down some notes about what I'm going to go over. But I'm also going to give you a free guide. And in that guide, you're going to get more details about these steps, and you're going to get my updated SOP template. And the link to that description is below in the comments as well as in the description, or you can go to CherylCPerez.com/process guide to grab it. So make sure that you do. And I also want you to know that I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video talking about the importance of business processes. I have been there and I have done that. So I'll go ahead and link to that playlist right now because I've got more than one video so that you can check that out. Because if you find yourself still confused about why you need business processes and systems, then before you can do anything that I'm getting ready to show you, you've got to go back, watch those videos, and get your mind wrapped around why. Because there is work involved when documenting your processes. There's work involved in creating your processes. There is mental bandwidth that you are going to use. There's time, there's effort. It takes dedication, it takes commitment. And if you don't have your mind wrapped around how critical all of this is to your business growth and to your journey towards freedom, then you've got to start with those other episodes. But if you're still watching, then you already know. Boo. Okay? So let's go ahead and get into creating these processes and these SOPs. Step number 1 in creating your processes and SOPs is pretty simple, but it requires a lot of bandwidth. And that is writing down all your tasks associated with whatever it is that you are doing. Now, let's just say that I'm going to be documenting my refund process, which is a very important money out process. So I'm documenting my refund process. And the first thing I'm going to do is really write down all of the things that I've done in the past when I've had to issue a refund. So if you've done it before, you already know all the tasks that you had to do in order to successfully get it completed. It may have been messy, it may have been all over the place, and it may have been really ugly in order for you to do it, but you did it. So those tasks are the ones that I'm talking about. So in this step, you want to write all of those tasks down. Now, if you've never done the process before, and I always recommend to my startup business students and my very early stage entrepreneurs to still think through what you will do when you get that refund request, okay? You've got to think through that future thing. And your thoughts, everything that you think about, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy, but you will appreciate taking the time to really think through it and to consciously make a decision on what's going to happen when someone requests a refund from you. Because the worst time to figure it out is as it's happening. And because this does require some brainstorming and some thought processes, I like to use a big old whiteboard. Now, y'all know how I feel about whiteboards. And I just start writing and I just start thinking. And I usually got some music playing in the background, so I'm chilling. But I'm just focused on really thinking through all of the detailed tasks that I have to do in order to get someone their refund. Now that I've done step 1 and I've written out all of the tasks, I look at my whiteboard and I move on to step number 2. I reorganize them into a sequential order. What's first, what's second, what's third, and I put those tasks in the order they should be in for the process to be as smooth as possible. So even as I was brainstorming those tasks on that whiteboard, I may have been jotting them down in a disorganized way because I'm just regurgitating tasks. But once I've written out all the tasks, now it's really my job to step back, look at those tasks, and begin to put them in the appropriate order so that they flow into a smooth process. And that's what I'm doing here. That's why I love a good whiteboard, because I can write everything down, I can erase numbers, I can rewrite numbers, I can just renumber them, and then ultimately, at that point, I've got a great idea of what this concrete process flow is going to look like. And then I move on to step number 3, which is mapping out that process flow into a visual sequence or a process map. I like to see it visually because it's easier for me to follow. The detailed is great, but it's really nice to be able to just look at a map. So I ultimately create the process map. And my favorite place to do that is Microsoft Word, believe it or not. Now, there's a lot of mapping software out there, and I've actually used tons of them over the years. And I still do. Like when I'm creating sales processes or sales funnels, I actually use a specific mapping software. But for an overall process, especially when you're just starting out in documentation, Word is amazing for doing and creating your maps. So let me show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so let me walk you through really quickly kind of what I do when I am mapping the process flow and I use Word to do it. So here's my Word document. We're going to go ahead and open that up. And the first thing that I do is I insert, and one of my favorite things to insert is going to be Smart Art. So if you click on the Smart Art, it actually opens up all kinds of Smart Art graphics. I always use the Process Smart Art graphic, and there's lots of different ones that you can choose from. And you can pick the one that you like, that you think is going to be the easiest or the funnest. I tend to choose a repeating bending process because it allows me to put many, many steps on. So it's either the vertical bending or the repeating bending. And so typically I just go with the repeated bending and I hit OK. Once I do that, it's going to insert this process map in there for me. And as you can see, you can enter text into each of these boxes. So in the instance of this particular process that we're looking for, which is the refund process, you've got text that you can enter. Now, the easiest way to enter text so that it just kind of continues and you can do it pretty quickly is that I click right here on text pane. So it shows me what text is actually being entered into the process. And that first bullet point, as you can see, when I start typing, it's going to just go ahead and type it into that first box. So in this refund process, I'm just going to put refund request received via finance email notification. And then I'm going to hit the tab. I'm going to, if I can just spell, guys, finance. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit the next text box and enter the next step. So review client profile. I'm just going to keep typing in all of the steps of my process, so on and so forth. I'm going to compare client, review, findings, so on and so forth. So when I get down to this last little box of text, as I enter in my last one, this particular process has 8 steps. I've only got 5 boxes, but when I hit enter, it's going to continue to add boxes. So I will be able to continue to add as many steps as I need to add. And once I'm done entering all of those steps, I can click out of that text box, and then I can actually stretch and move this to whatever size I need it to be. You can also go into your layout in your Word document, change the orientation of the paper or of your actual process flow. You can spread it out. It's going to ultimately then do what you need to do, and the arrows are automatically going to be in there. And for me, you know, I always like everything to be branded. So I click on this design button. I make sure that my colors are chosen, and then I can ultimately go in and change those colors. If you want to change the colors, which I typically do for my branding, I always use kind of the colorful where it takes any of my brand colors and it turns it, you know, into those colors. And so you can kind of play with it and get it to a final version that you like. But it's really simple. As you can see, Word is a perfect place to use your Smart Art and then ultimately to create your process map and your process flow. Cool, right? Yes, I may be getting a little nerdy on you because I've told you about my nerdy background, but I just love that visual map of what this process looks like. It allows me from a different angle to kind of step back and make sure that I'm not missing anything and to think through the steps that I'm doing in even more detail, making sure that they make sense. And it also helps me move on to step number 4. And step number 4 is something that I think is very unique to my process because I've never seen anybody else who does Lean Six Sigma or Kaizen or anything like that. Trainings, guys, that I've gone through. I'm actually a yellow belt, y'all. Okay. And I've never seen this step. And that is determining your assets and responsibilities based upon the process flow and the process map that we just created. So let me explain what I mean when I say determine your assets and your responsibilities. Once you have your process flow written out step by step, and you've got your process map done, that visual depiction, you can visually see what flows from each step to step. So now it is time to figure out what you need in order to get each step done. Those are the assets. And who is going to be in charge of each of those steps? That's who's responsible. So I begin to document those in my process flowchart. And it's the table that you just saw that I created. And it basically has all the steps, and then it has columns that say responsibilities, assets, and then it also has a column that says timing. And in that column that says assets, I look at each step in my process and I begin to write down what I need in order to get that step done. So for instance, in my refund process that we are creating in this example, there's a step that says research client profile and determine which product they bought, right? How much they paid. I'm supposed to figure out when their purchase was made, and I'm supposed to compare it against their product's refund policy because each product may have something different with regards to the refund policy. Now, in order for me to do that, I know I have to have a way to store client records, right? To store my client profile so I can look it up. So obviously, in order to successfully do this step, I have to have a place to go and look it up. And for me, that is our CRM system, our client relationship management system, our support system. Every single client is in that system. They all have a record that can be checked. They all have a profile. And in that record, I can see all of those details. I can see what they've purchased. I can see the date, and it allows me to store that data. So in this step, in order to get it done, one of the assets, obviously, that I need is a client management system. I need some place to store client data. That's an asset. There's also a step in my refund process that says acknowledge receipt of the refund request with the client. Well, in order for me to do that, I have to have an email system, right? Because I can't email them if I don't. I have to be able to email the client back and let them know that we've received their request and that we're processing their request. So the asset for that step means I need an email system or an email provider, as well as the email template, right? Of course, I want an email template because it should be a standard, consistent message that automatically goes back to every single client that has submitted a refund request. Now, I don't want to leave it up to my customer service representative or my team to figure out what to say. Or if I'm that person, I don't want to leave it up to me to figure it out every time either. So in order for me to create a brand new email, to avoid creating a brand new email every time, I have to create a template because otherwise it's not efficient. So in this step, I need an email system as well as an email template as assets. So you get where I'm going with step number 4, right? Each step is going to require assets, and this is where you determine what those assets are. Now, I also mentioned in this step is for you to determine who's responsible for the step. And that really depends upon whether or not you have a team, or whether or not it's still just you, or whether or not it's going to actually be a technology tool that really manages that step. So for example, in the examples that we've been talking about here, research client profile, the person responsible for that is the customer service representative that has received the request, right? And in the other step that says acknowledge receipt of the refund request and inform the client that it's being processed, that is the responsibility of the customer service rep who received the request as well. Or it's the responsibility of a technology tool that can send out an auto reply as soon as we receive the request. Got it? So moving on to step number 5, document everything into an SOP or a standard operating procedure template. So as I mentioned, if you grab my free gift to you that's in the comments and the description below or on the website, CherylCPerez.com/process guide, it is going to give you my SOP template on steroids. And now, after you've written everything out in these previous steps and you've created your workflow, you've mapped out that process, you've determined who the assets are, who the responsibility is, what the assets are, all that's left for you to do is to really formalize it by putting it into a standard operating procedure or SOP. And that is exactly what you're seeing right now. So this SOP document has a place for you to put your process flow. It also has an entire place for you to put that process map that we just created, which is what I just showed you, the table and that map that we just did in Word. But it also has some other sections and some other pieces of information that you need to go ahead and add in to formalize your operating procedure. So you're going to look at what your process goal is and who your process lead is going to be. And that's the person who really is in charge of the process. You have to make sure that you name the process very clearly so everyone knows what it is. You have to also look at what the range or scope of the process is, which is included in the process and what's not to include in the process. You have to note what is going to trigger this process to begin. So that's kind of like the input. And then what ultimately is going to be the result or the achievement of the process. In your SOP or in this document, you will also document areas that the process might pivot. So for instance, in my refund example that we've been using, I've got a couple of process pivots. Like in the first step, when the refund request is received via our finance email box. But what if someone requests a refund in a different way? That is a pivot from the original step. So in this section, I need to include alternate or additional steps that may apply. And they may replace the previous steps in my previous process in the event that someone requests a refund in a different way. So in this instance, my process pivot is, if someone sends a refund request to the help desk, add step 1A, which includes the help desk forwarding the request to the finance email address, because it always needs to start there. So anything that could change or differ in my originally documented process is considered a pivot. And in this section, I'm going to list what should be added or changed in the original process when a pivot occurs. You'll also notice in this document that you want to write down what checkpoints you're going to use, when you're going to kind of check things out and review things and make sure that they're working out well. And then obviously that process flow chart that we've already talked about. And so I really could go way more in depth into this, and maybe I will. And actually I will, but not in this video. So make sure that you grab that guide because it's a little bit more detailed in there for you than even what I'm able to get to in today. So let's talk about step 6, and that is execute the process, follow the process, and make notes of any bottlenecks that you're experiencing in your process. So you're wondering, how do you do that, CP? Well, it's really simple. I use project management system. I've talked about my favorite project management system in previous videos. You guys know already how I feel about Asana. So every single SOP that we have in our business has been added to Asana as a project. And all the steps in order with the assets and the templates have all been added to Asana. So when we are actually executing one of these SOPs, it allows me to keep track of all the steps and assign the tasks so that we can follow all the steps in order. And also maintain the timeliness and the deadlines because I'm looking at them in this project management software. So I do recommend that in order to effectively execute your processes, they have to be kind of front and center in your face and in your mind at all times. You have to be looking at them. You have to be aware that they exist. They have to kind of create your workflow. And the best way that we manage our workflow in our business, and I recommend in yours, is through the use of project management software. Link to Asana below, babe. So I do think that step number 6 is best completed when you add your processes to a project management software. You assign the steps, you give folks on your team or yourself the deadlines, and you just kind of knock them out. And that brings me to step number 7, which is tweak your processes in order to remove any bottlenecks that you've determined and improve your efficiency. Because that's what it's really all about, right? That's really the phase that I'm in this year. I am really in process improvement phase. I have documented the majority of the processes that exist in our business already. I've been documenting them for years. But every single year, we take a look at those SOPs and we have a conversation as a team about what's not working, what is working, what's taking extra time, what's been slowing everything down. And we try to figure out ways to implement new strategies or implement new software automations or find new technology that can remove some of those bottlenecks in order to improve the process's efficiency. And I recommend that you review your SOPs regularly as well, especially if they're new processes. On a quarterly basis, I would say at the very minimum. Because we've been refining ours for so long, we really are in the habit of looking at them every single year. But if it's a brand new process in CP brands that we've implemented, even though my business has been around for a long time, we start out in reviewing that process and tweaking that process on a quarterly basis. Why? Because I don't want to go a whole year doing something that's not working or doing something that's inefficient. So at the end of every quarter, we take a look at our new process. We say, all right, let's talk about how it worked. Let's talk about how it didn't work. What were some of the things that delayed things? What are some of the reasons? What are some of the problems that we're seeing? What prevented us from being able to do things smoothly? And we just work through changing it. What if we put something in place, we determine and we test things? What if we just add an email automation? What if, you get it, right? You get it. You understand where I'm going with this. It allows you to kind of make adjustments and to remove those bottlenecks. And now I've got a CP impact tip for you. Okay? Because this is something that I just started doing in the last few years to help with my business processes and my SOP creation. And that is to record the final process and make a video. Yes, record it. Once you have created your processes, you've executed them, you've noted your bottlenecks, and you've worked really hard to improve your efficiency and tweak and remove those bottlenecks, you have gotten your process to what you would consider to be a maximum place of efficiency. And once you've gotten your processes to where you think they are tight and they are consistent and they're doing really, really good for you, then I recommend you record yourself or someone on your team doing those processes so that you ultimately have a video training library ready to go. A lot of people will tell you, and I've seen the trainings before from other gurus, to just record it as soon as you create it. And I've tried that in the past. And I don't like that because I end up recording things over and over and over again because obviously I'm still tweaking and improving my processes consistently. But once I've gotten them to a point where I feel like there really isn't much else we can do to make it significantly better, then I record what the process is. And I store it in our employee training library. That way, when I hire new employees, your future employees, or when someone new comes on board and they're going to have to do whatever it is the process is, not only will they have the documented SOPs to look at, the process flow charts that we've created, but they will also have a videotaped recorded training to learn from. So, what do you think? Was I right? It was a lot of information, I know. And guess what? This is just the beginning, boo. This is just the beginning of the process lab. I warned you because like I've mentioned already in other videos and today, for the next few weeks, we're going to be focusing on knocking out your process documentation and creation in 2021 for your business. And I've got so much more content that is coming your way that's going to make sure that you can get that done. So come on, if you are hella pumped about that, smash that like button. Don't forget to share this video with someone else that you know needs to work on their business processes, and make sure that you click that bubble right next to me to subscribe, and you click the bell so you don't miss any of the Process Lab series and videos that we're doing. And don't forget to grab your guide below. It's life-changing, y'all. And until next time, my love, stay safe. I'll see you on Tuesday. Mwah! Bye-bye.
V,